morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning to all of you who are with us over the internet. Happy Easter, first of all. And we're glad that you're all here, even though it's Easter, even though probably you would be with family celebrating right now. But it's always good to be here together celebrating Easter, this day that it's so important for us and who has such a strong meaning for us who are Christians in general, not only Spiritists, but I think for anyone who's a Christian. It's a very special day because it has a very profound meaning. And that's what Joyce is going to be talking about today, about the message of Easter. So what is Easter and what we should take from it, right? Because definitely it's a little bit more than Easter bunny and the eggs that bunnies don't lay, but even less chocolate. If they did, I'm pretty sure we all have a bunny at home, but they don't. So, but before we do it, as always, going to have our initial lecture and our initial prayer. Okay, so Olivia's going to help with the lecture. Are you doing the prayer as well? Okay.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
So the initial readings from the book Happy Life by Givaldo Pereira Franco and Joana de Angelis. The opportunities for moral improvement that life allows us should be taken advantage of wisely and immediately. The march of time is inevitable, and an occasion neglected is lost forever. Time and wind never come back. Thus, it is a liberating blessing to utilize every opportunity for inner growth. Stay alert in order to take the most advantage of the hours of your earthly existence.
So let us all now close our eyes and elevate our thoughts and our hearts to God our Father, to Jesus our Master, and connect to all the benefactors here present, and thank for the opportunity of being here again today, receiving all this blessed lessons, all this blessed energy that surrounds us right now. Let's thank God for being here today in such a special day, which is Easter, that reminds us of all the teachings that Jesus brought to us. And I would like to ask the spiritual friends here to enlighten Joyce and help her during her lecture so she can help us to learn a little bit more of the laws of love and charity that Jesus brought to us. And so be it. So Joyce, it's all yours.
So good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
And thanks again for all being here today. It's always a pleasure. Today we're going to talk a little bit about Easter and what that means, especially how Spiritism see Easter and how Spiritism understanding about that. So similar to what happened with Christmas, that nowadays our modern society all see Christmas all about Santa Claus. Similar thing happened with Easter, right? As we mentioned initially today, for many people it's all about bunnies and eggs and chocolate eggs and so on. So it's important for us to really understand that it's a lot more behind that. And also help to spread this message, right? Especially to the little ones, because who doesn't love chocolate? Who doesn't love chocolate eggs? And who doesn't feel that think that bunnies are cute, right? So it's easy to get involved to that message and stay just connected to that, because all the market also put lots of pressure on that, so it's a huge business, right? So it's easy to forget what is the real meaning of Easter. So that is my invitation for you guys today to stay with me and let's learn a little bit more. And let's spread this message, because it's a beautiful message and it's a very powerful and deep message actually. And most of us, or maybe all of us I would say, have already an idea about what is Easter. Some here it's new in Spiritism and have the message from other religious practice, and all the messages from any religious, if you go deep inside, you're gonna see that they are similar. They have the same kind of message, but the problem is that if for some people they got so involved in all the symbology behind it that they make that message too simple, and there's a lot more to understand. And in order to bring that to our own life and to practice and really bring that to the process of our inner transformation, we need to understand that more deeper. And Spiritism, it's a great tool to help us to get to understand more about the message that was ultimately brought to us by Jesus. So let's understand a little bit about history and about the meaning of the words and about how all this started, right? The word that we use in English for this time of the year is Easter, and it's mainly, it's not totally known how that word came up, but most people understand that it came from the Anglo-Saxon English. Probably not pronounce it correctly, but it's Istro or Istri, that is a goddess of spring and fertility. And it makes lots of sense, right? Because this time of the year, it's a time of renovation in general. The nature is teaching us the power of renovation, right? Coming from pretty much death, and came up with the whole renovation with leaves and flowers. So it's not by a chance that it's celebrated at this time of the year, because we can see that renovation in the nature as well, from winter to spring. And but of course, the meaning, there's a lot more history behind it, and it always started by the Jewish people. And it always started a lot before Jesus. So the Easter that most of us understanding, because maybe most of us comes from a Christian background or especially Catholic background, that give us the message that the Easter is all about Jesus. Yeah, that's true that after Jesus, Easter got that meaning, but it did not start with Jesus, right? Actually, Jesus, and we see that many passages, he celebrated Easter with family and with the disciples, right? So the beginning of that started with the Jewish culture, the Jewish tradition. And they don't use the word Easter, they use the word Passover. And if you go more in deep in the Hebraic language, and you're gonna understand how that word came up, because this is an English word. So it came up from Pasa, Pesa, or Pascha. Those are all words that has at the end the same meaning of Passover or jump. And we're gonna understand when that came from. So there are many things that happen in the past, like long time ago, centuries, thousands of years ago, that brought that tradition and that celebration to the Jewish people. So one that is mainly known, and it's very relevant for the Jewish, is the time that they freed themselves from the slavery. They were enslaved by the Egyptians for about 400 years. And they were finally able, led by Moses, they were able to free themselves from that slavery time. And that is a very powerful moment, because from that time they were able to restart their lives in a different place, right? So this is one of the meaning from the Passover. And they celebrate that usually in a whole week. It's not just one day, but the celebration started today, but it's pretty much the whole week of celebration. But also there are lots of other symbologies and metaphors behind it for the Jewish people. And the way we understand that is pretty much it's very hard for us. The reason that they have all the symbology behind is because it's pretty hard for us to translate into words our beliefs in religion, in any type of religion, because the religion or religiosity is what is pretty much about your experience with God. What you feel, how do you understand? And our language is still too simple to translate that. And that's why in every religious practice, not only in between the Jewish, there's a lot of symbols, symbology, metaphors, parables behind it in order to help to express that feeling, right? And so the same thing happened with the Easter time. So it's all about the big symbology behind it. It's all about the understanding that they thought that a death angel would come and visit each house, and that death angel would kill or sacrifice the oldest kid of each house. And the way for the family to free themselves or to not allow that to happen is they had to kill or sacrifice a lamb, and they have to use that blood from that lamb and mark the doors for the house. So a house that had that mark on the door, the angel would pass over, would pass or jump and go to another place. And so they instead of having the oldest kid sacrifice, they just need to sacrifice a lamb and mark the house with that blood. So that is the symbology behind it. And the reason that they use the image of a lamb behind that is because also in the Jewish tradition, they had already the tradition of getting a baby lamb and taking care of that lamb for a whole week. And that is happened during the time close to celebrate the Passover. So they took care, they start to have some affection, especially the children in the house, start to be very connected to that lamb. The lamb started to be like a member of the family. They start to be connected to that little animal. And then at the end of the week was time to sacrifice that lamb, and they all had a dinner or a meal with the lamb. And the idea behind it was that eating that lamb was supposed to be something painful, and that's why before eating you need to have that whole week with that animal to get that connection. So once you are having that animal, like the meat, you were feeling the pain, and then that pain was supposed, and that was the hope, to allow you to reflect about your own life and maybe start the process of transformation. So the pain that you were feeling during that moment was supposed to make you reflect about the meaning of yourself, the meaning of life, and help you to transform. And when Jesus came, of course we know Jesus was also a Jewish people. He came from the same tradition and the same type of celebration. So he actually changed the meaning of the lamb toward his own history, right? So what he did, he pretty much for about 3 years, he was very close to his disciples. He was very connected, doing all activities with the disciples, like wake up early in the morning, go fishing, have dinner together, and pretty much showing lots of love and receiving love from the disciples. So he got the same connection that the tradition tell us that they do with the lamb, right? And then at the end was, of course, more than a week, but with the same meaning. At the end, he was sacrificed by those people, right? So, and that's why in the Catholic Church, they use that Jesus was the lamb and it was seen by the Lamb that brought the salvation, because his sacrifice brought lots of pain, lots of guilty, and that sentiment, that feeling was supposed to be the one to help people to transform, to forgive, and to change. That's all the meaning behind it, right? And of course, the understanding is seen by each one in different degrees, and it requires lots of interpretation. And in the Catholic Church practice, or not only Catholicism, but some Christians practice, we see people getting a harder interpretation about this. We see them sometimes giving lots of attention to the guilty and punishment part, right? We see people with doing auto-flagellation during the week before Easter, because they think that they really need to suffer the same as Jesus in order to become a better person, maybe, or maybe because they feel so guilty by what we have done to Jesus. So they feel that they need to go through this process to get the salvation. And with the Spiritism, we will see that it's not about that. Jesus did not suffer to in order to give us the message that we need to suffer as well. Right, so we're gonna see that it's a lot more than that, and we shouldn't get too simple in that interpretation. We need to understand things in a deeper way, and the Catholic Church specifically started to celebrate the Easter about around the 2nd century after Christ, so around the year 200 or so, and there was a lot of discussion when was the time of the year. So of course, same that happens with Christmas, not necessarily at this day was the day that Jesus was sacrificed, right? All the calendars change, and was all made up by humans afterwards. So what is important, what I'm trying to say, is not exactly specifically the day, but the meaning. And we're gonna see at the end that actually the truth message is that we do this not only in that day, similar to the message of Christmas, right? That we keep the message in our heart and do it all time, continuously. And that's what Jesus wants from us. And then, in order to understand where the eggs come from, where the bunnies come from, those are not from neither the Jewish or Catholicism or Christians religions. Those actually came from different polytheistic cultures. And because again, was always in the time of the year that the spring happened, that they harvest, that there's lots of transformation going on. So all those symbols actually remind us about this renovation that spring brought to us, and the fertility, right? So that's why the eggs comes from, and that's why we have the image of the bunny, although bunny, there's nothing to do with the eggs, but it's related because it's a very fertile animal, and that's why they all came together. And the chocolate is pretty much because chocolate is too good, so everything that is good has chocolate involved. I'm kidding, but anyways, it comes all from this time, and it's all related with also the business market that took advantage of that and kept the message alive all those time of the year. So, and what about Spiritism? How Spiritism see this? First of all, one of the things that Spiritism clearly tells us is that to respect the meaning and celebration from different religious practice. So I'm not here today to tell that, oh, the Jewish are doing all wrong, the Catholics are doing all wrong. Not at all. They are doing what they believe and what they learned through the time. And as I told you before, that if we go in deep, we see that all messages are connected. So they are not wrong at all. They just see the things in a different way that Spiritism see. what Spiritism does, they bring to us a deeper understanding about all this symbology, right? So how to understand what the lamp means, how to understand what all this transformation, what actually, thank you, what actually this is all about. And we're gonna see that this is all about life, meaning what life means, and about the immortality of soul. And that's the message that Spiritism bring to us, right? So all the message of Easter, it's pretty much to tell us to use this time to reflect about yourself, to start to know yourself, and to start to transform yourself. Spiritism did not specifically celebrate Easter the same way as the other religions. We do not have a specific celebration or tradition for that. Which we believe is that this process needs to be continuous. Once we learn the message from Jesus, we need to do that every day. It's not just during a week. And the freedom that we mention, and that all the other religions also mention this time as like the Jewish freed themselves from slavery. The Catholics believe that Jesus suffered so much and was crucified and all that to free ourselves, to save ourselves from our sins. And what the Spiritists believe is that actually we need to free ourselves from our own mistakes, from our own vices. So the message that we need to carry is that we need to free the old man that we carry and restart. Because all of us has the seed of love, the seed of goodness, and inside of us. We just need to give them a chance to know and to flourish, right? So it's a springtime. It's time for us to cultivate the good seed inside of us. So and that is pretty much the process of inner transformation. Because most of us come from a Catholic background, maybe, and in the Catholicism practice, the Lent time, so the 40 days before Christmas, it's a time that people do lots of they private themselves from lots of bad habits, including food, like they stop eating meat, or during those 40 days, those who drink alcohol stop drinking for those 40 days because they believe that it's a process, a time to give themselves that chance to be better. So I would say that maybe if it's still too hard for us to put our efforts to be good all the time, maybe let's start with the Lent. There's no problem. Maybe use those 40 days, but instead of doing something physical and related to matter, like for example, private yourself or abstain yourself from eating a certain specific type of food, do in a different way. So say, during those 40 days, I will try to forgive every day. So I will pay attention to myself, and I will focus myself in forgiving. Or I will focus myself in not yelling, or maybe do a better job at home with my family. Maybe some baby steps, right? Because it's hard for us to do that whole transformation, and maybe it's hard for us to keep track every day of the year as we should do. So maybe try to use the Lent, the 40 days, to start that process. And we're gonna see that we are able to, with baby steps, with little things, in order to clear yourself from that selfishness and pride. And another very important message behind the Easter, understood by Spiritism, is the power of forgiveness. Because the only way you can transform yourself is if you start to forgive. And maybe starting forgiving yourself, giving yourself a chance to repair, to understand your own mistakes, and be nice to you, and then move towards to the others around you. Jesus brought this message that is very powerful, and we all know. Love one another as I have loved you. So remember that sentence. And when we say love one another, that includes yourself. Okay? Remember to love yourself as well. And Paul told us that forgiving offenses is to show that one became better. So that's the only way we can go through the inner transformation, is through love and through forgiveness. Because we do make mistakes. We came with lots of mistakes from even previous lives. Even if we are doing everything right at this life, we have lots of things to correct. So we need to understand that and give ourselves a chance to go through that process of healing. So as many understand that Jesus came to save us, I see in a different way, and that's the way Spiritism tells us. Because if we keep thinking, oh, Jesus came to save us, it's easy because we took ourselves from the job of working to transform ourselves. It's easy just to think, oh, that guy came, he suffered too much, he saved us from our sins, right? It's a simple way to see. So the way Spiritism sees that actually he came to us to show us the pathway to be saved. It's our job and our responsibility to follow those steps. It's not easy, but that's what Jesus invited us. He showed us all the pathway for that. You will never, like, we see many examples where he was all about love, forgiveness, patience, tolerance. We never see a single example of prejudice or of exclusion. It's all the other way, right? And Jesus had a chance to meet all different types of people, all personalities, like from prostitutes to homeless to power politicians. So from the hierarchy, from the very bottom to the very bottom. So with all of them, he shows love, understanding, respect, and tolerance. So those are the pathway, right, that we need to remember in our journey. So he actually came to free humankind from the slavery of matter. So that's the message. That's the message that he wants to tell us, that actually all that we see here is temporary, right? What matters, what is important, is our spiritual life, our eternal life, our immortal life. And of course, without charity, there is no salvation. It's all about charity. So that deeper meaning of Easter, it should be in our heart. It should be in our heart every day. It's a continuous process. And in the Spirit's book, question 909, it was asked to the spirits, could humans always overcome their evil tendencies through their own efforts? And the spirits were simple and clear in saying yes, and sometimes with very little effort. We think that's always too hard, right? But not all the time is that hard. We make it hard. So what they lack, so what we lack is the willpower. Very few people, how few of you make such an effort, however. So, and that is the reflection that we should take today, right? What are the efforts that I'm making? What I'm doing every day? So a good exercise that we mention here many times in different lectures, in different situations, and I find that very, very powerful, is do that reflection before going to bed, before going to sleep. What I've done today, what are the situations, because it's a lot easier or less difficult maybe to analyze a single piece like a day instead of doing the reflection of your whole life, right? And actually it's even more difficult or impossible to go through our whole history, because we don't know a lot about previous lives, right? So maybe stop, just analyze a day and think, because that also we can remember, think in every situation since you wake up, since you said good morning to your partner or to your kids. And maybe by doing that reflect, you see, oh, today I woke up, I even say good morning to my partner. I just woke up, start my routine, start my work, and didn't think about like giving a hug or saying hi to someone I love. See, those very little things that can be very important in this process. So by doing that analysis, you can think about every step you went through the day, and you're going to start also to learn to learn about yourself doing that, because you're going to do that out of reflection, and you're going to see, oh, maybe in that situation I should do this, that, and that. Maybe I should be more patient. Also, during that time is a time that usually, not all the time happen, but usually we kind also overcome the difficulties or that feeling of anger that some situation brought to us, right? So we are in a better position to judge our own, and kind of not only see ourselves as a victim anymore, and try to have a broad assessment about how we did. And that's what we need to start to know ourselves and start the process of inner transformation. So I really invite each of you to start that. We usually do our prayers right before going to bed, so do that as well. It's just a few minutes that require, and think about what you've done that day, and think how you could do different to make yourself happier and to make people around you happier. So and now I'm gonna give I think it's 3 examples of people that went through that process and were able to transform themselves. Of course, we are not them. The examples that I will give here today are people that were able to do a huge transformation in one life, that not necessarily will happen with us. Each of us here has a different background, has different mistakes to repair. So don't, my idea is not for you to push yourself to do everything in one life, because you might be too hard on you. Depends on your history, on how much you need to change, right? But just use those people as inspiration, because if they were able to change that much and to do so much good things in one life, we can do a lot too. And we don't need to do as much or as powerful as they did. We do not need to be an example in history for people in future to say, oh, Joyce, this woman did this and this. No, but I want to be able to make my life in my community, in my family, in my working environment a little bit better. That I can do, and that's what we need to do. Okay, so I will start with Paul of Tarsus, and I will not go deep in that as well, because in about 2 weeks or so we're gonna have a lecture about this apostle. And what I will use today as well is to invite all of you to read the book about Paul of Tarsus. That it's an amazing, is one of, maybe for me at least, one of the best Spiritist book. And prepare yourself for that lecture, because it will be like you're gonna take more advantage if you learn a little bit more about Paul of Tarsus. It's a real inspiration for everyone. So he was a relentless persecutor of Christians, and he truly believed inside himself as a Jewish at that time that he was doing that, just fulfilling and following the God's wish. So he really thought that was fair and just what he was doing by persecuting the Christians. And after the murder of Stephen, which is one of important character in the history of Paul. Once that murder happened, Paul started to see how much love that guy received from the Jesus disciple, and that really touched him. That was the first step when all his transformation started. But of course, he was still not ready at that time, and although he was truly touched by seeing all the love that Stephen received after being murdered, he was still very resistant to accept the idea, to accept the power of love. So he was fighting against that until the time that he physically met Jesus. And it's beautiful, that description of the book, the dialogue between Jesus and Saul, because that he became Paul after the transformation. His initial name was Saul. Is one of the most beautiful example, and very inspiring passage of the book as well. And after that moment, he became another person, and we see his pathway after that. It completely changed. He was able in a single moment to be touched and to realize how many mistakes he have done, and at the same time he used that energy not to punish himself, not to feel guilty, and not to feel as a victim, but instead to see what can I do from now on to make it different and to repair all my mistakes. So that was beautiful and very inspiring, because many of us also, during this process of knowing ourselves, we can start to be very hard on ourselves and see, oh my God, really, I'm that person that do this. I'm so impatient. I'm yelling all the time with people. I'm so intolerant. And if you nourish that feeling, that can kind of make you very sad and depressed. So remember that this process is important, because you can only change yourself if you start to know yourself, but took the energy to transform. And always remember that you can always do it different. Okay, so any type of mistake you can repair, and you can make it different for a future happier life, I would say. So Paul of the Tarsus, for me, was one of the best examples. And again, of course, was a huge transformation in one life. But I use him as a very nice inspiration, very powerful inspiration. Another example is Mary Magdalene. We all know her as being adulteress and a prostitute in history, right? And she was neglected by the society. Like at that time, prostitution was seen in a very bad, well, still today, right, in a very bad way, and the society per se never gave her a chance to transform. The only person that understood her and gave her the hand to transform herself was Jesus, right? And after knowing Jesus, she starts to fight a lot against her own roots, but at the same time, again, similar to Paul, he took that energy and that efforts to do it different, instead of just being depressed about all the mistakes that she have done. So she was not able to transform as much as Paul and do as much as Paul have done, but since she had a chance to learn and to know Jesus, she transformed herself as much as she could, and that made a huge difference in her soul, in her spirit, right? And she put all efforts to follow Jesus, and she was with him until the very end. So it's also very inspiring transformation. And another one, I think this is the last one, I think I brought 3 only. It's St. Augustine. For those who had a chance to study and learn more about all the books brought by Allan Kardec, we know that St. Augustine was extremely important in providing us all those messages. He's present in the Spirit's book, he's present in the Gospel in many passages, giving us a light of understanding about the teachings of Jesus. But initially, when he was a young guy, he did not give importance to that. He just decided to have a nice life, just seeking satisfaction in physical things, not really thinking about the spiritual life, about the immortal life. Until he started to learn more and change, and using his gift as a very good writer and speaker, he started to use that for the good. And in the question 919 of the Spiritist book, he brought to us this message. Was given to Allan Kardec by the Spirit of St. Augustine. At the end of each day, I examined my conscience. So this question is also asking about how we do the inner transformation. At the end of each day, I examined my conscience, revealed what I had done, and asked myself whether or not I had failed to fulfill some duty, and whether or not anyone had reason to complain about me. That was exactly what I was inviting all of you guys to do it, right? It was thus that I arrived at knowing myself and in seeing what there was in me that needed to be reformed. Those who every night would recall all their actions during the day and would ask themselves what good or evil they had done would acquire great strength for self-improvement. Examine what you may have done against God, then against your neighbor, and lastly against yourself. The answer will be either repose for your conscience or an indication of a wrong that you must amend. Self-knowledge is therefore the key of individual improvement. We can only transform if you know what needs to be transformed, right? So we need to know yourself. Otherwise, you keep thinking that all the people around you need to transform, because the problem is everyone around you, not yourself, right? That's the easiest way. So now it's your turn. It's your time to do that process. And it's your time to think about Easter as the true experience that you can have with God, and use that connection and that experience to transform yourself. Knowing that we are immortal beings. This is just the time that we are here. and not only take the symbols behind, but actually understand the meaning and bring to practice. All of them have assistants, believers, and disseminators. However, their apostles are becoming more and more rare, because the apostles are supposed to be the ones who truly do it, right? There are always voices indicating the pathway. They transmit to us the words of those who know. Very rare are those who courageously go forward in the daily struggle. Many times they are left in silence, abandoned, and misunderstood. This is the supreme trial of those who do. Jesus understood the vacillation of the children of earth and transmitted to them the words of the truth and life, producing a maximum exemplification through arduous sacrifice, right? And we can see that from Jesus, even the very, very end, when he was in the cross, almost physically dying, and he said, and instead of showing any anger, he showed tons of love by praying to God, right? Forgive those people, they don't know what they are doing. So Jesus knew that we were all children still in a long process of learning, and that is still true, even 2000 after. The existence of an elevated theory creates the necessity of experience and work. If an edifying action was unnecessary, then the most humble theory of goodness would be fruitless. John observed the Master's teaching with wisdom, telling us in this verse here, that only those who practice Jesus' teachings can be blessed. Here in the Christian service resides the difference between culture and practice, knowing and doing. So today my idea was to show you what is the symbol behind, what is the tradition behind. This is just the culture, but what do we do with that? What do we do with that meaning? What do we do with all the things that Spiritists bring to us, right? What do we do with the beautiful example that Jesus brings to us? I don't see all that suffering of Jesus, all that pain, because there's lots of drama on that as well. I prefer to take that as a message to show me what I can do to make it difference, to make it better, to help the others. And that is my invitation for you, for everyone here today. Do that reflection and make the Easter or the reformation, retransformation, rebirth, like every day on your lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce, for a beautiful lecture. Do you have any comments or questions? Anything from the internet? No? Nothing? No, good. So we're all gonna leave here today and start in your transformation like in 5 minutes. Easy, because now it became easy, right? Very, very easy after this lecture.
We can start right now with our thoughts.
Yes.
During the time of the passes.
That's true.
Pay attention on our thoughts because they are powerful.
Yes, exactly. And don't fall asleep, Marco. Okay, so thank you very much, Joyce, for the lecture. And we are going to now prepare for the passes. So I would like to say thank you very much for all of those who were with us over the internet, and hoping to see you here next week as well.